And this is India. In fact, even the China Daily News, even the local Chinese governments have figured out that this is not good. Yes, they're getting a lot of low-cost raw material and they're employing a lot of people, but it's very problematic from a health standpoint. They've linked a lot of problems with the local drinking waters and health issues associated with the way they're handling these plastics because they simply don't know any better. And it's not just about the EH&S issues, the environmental health and safety issues. The European Union initially put the legislation in place that allows us to grab the plastics, in other words, responsible recycling legislation in place to protect the environment, and particularly in developing countries. But now, they don't even talk about that. They talk about resource security and creating green jobs. So they get it. This comes from the environmental group. Their equivalent of the EPA doesn't talk about protecting the environment. They talk about creating green jobs and providing resource security to the EU. Tom Friedman was nice enough to write us up in his new book. He dedicated 3 pages to us in his newest book about how here's great American technology, but it's only being used in Europe and Asia because they get it. And here's why we're over there, because our raw materials. So we developed the technology in California, which is where I still hang out a few days a month. But we had to build plants in China, Austria, and the UK, because that's both where the raw materials are and that's where our customers are in China in particular, because we sell to the largest IT companies in the world, and that's where they make their stuff these days. This is our plant in China. They're very high tech. By the way, any of you can organize a visit with us. We're quite open. We didn't used to be that way, but we're quite open to visitors. We're quite happy to show you what we're doing, so just let me know. I'm happy if you're in any of these regions. Guangzhou, China, Austria, sort of the middle of Austria, about halfway between Vienna and Salzburg. And then just our newest and largest plant in the UK. And that's in northern UK up near Sheffield. It's in a town called Worksop. This one's interesting because it was our first adventure into automotive. Shredder residue, you saw how ugly that was. It's only about 20% plastic, so we had to develop technology at our supplier so they wouldn't ship us 80% waste to take that 20% plastic content and increase it to 85% before they ship it to us. And we've managed to do that, and they've installed it. I was there last week before I came here, and the real breakthrough at this plant is that our supplier couldn't keep up with our ramp up and our capacity, so we had to go out and find more sources of plastics. It's a lot of stress on my plant manager, but it's good for the business, obviously. And we had to go to municipal solid waste. So just last week, this plant recycled 1 million pounds of municipal solid waste plastic. So bottles, yogurt cups, shampoo containers, broken toys, you name it. Completely mixed municipal solid waste, well, completely mixed plastic-rich municipal solid waste that had been sorted out from the metals and the glass by the MRF, Material Recovery Facility. So we are now in this space. We're in it commercially, and we're in it in a big way. So we're looking for the next mountains of waste to go after, and that's one of the reasons I came to Rio. I'm looking for the mountains. I can't do my business unless I find them. We know they're there. They just have to be collected and organized in a way that we can get to them. So thank you. I don't know, it's probably not time, well, it's up to you. But it's up to Doug if we have time for questions. I don't.
We'll do a question, but Mike will be on stage in a little bit after the conference break. We have to fit someone else in. So one question, and we'll get her later.
Thank you, Mike. Incredible technology. So how do you push that further down into the municipality level, which you just alluded to, which is sort of the holy grail of all this?
Yeah, and that's the great question, and I'm working on trying to figure that out. I mean, we've been, and it depends on what country you're in and what the existing infrastructure is. So in India, you have to deal with an informal structure. I had to get permission to go into the slums by the slum landlord, basically, which wasn't easy, but I managed to get in and walk around, and with an escort, of course. But they let me take pictures and they let me learn how they handle it. And the trouble was, even though that looked like a lot of material, in our space it's very little material. They've got it, it's just scattered everywhere. Now, it was concentrated in the slum, which is why I went there, but it's still, by commercial standards, it just wasn't sufficient. Now, that is one of the, obviously that's a very high-tech plants that we're building, And again, I invite you to see them, but they're quite expensive to build and they're rather expensive to operate. So the way I'm profitable and the way I can offer a material that's lower than virgin pricing is by large scale. It's the economies of scale, just like the virgin guys do it. Now, economies of scale for us is still only about 10% the size of a full virgin plant. So a virgin plant would probably be a billion pound a year plant by today's standards, 1 billion pounds a year. Our plants are 40,000 tons a year, so which is about 100 million pounds, so 10%. And if we can get to that scale, then we're profitable and we can offer a material to the marketplace that's competitive with virgin. It's the collection. Okay, so the easy answer, it's complicated, but the easy answer that you'll probably understand. I live well, I spend a little time, theoretically, I live in San Francisco, which is supposedly a high-tech area, right? I don't have fiber optics to my home, and the reason I don't is because of that last mile problem that you hear about in the high-tech space. Well, in recycling, it's just the opposite. It's the first mile problem. So getting waste from each individual household is expensive and not easy, particularly if you're a lazy American who doesn't want to help the process. So that's the nut that needs to be cracked, is that first mile problem. Once the first mile problem is cracked, everything else pays for itself. But that's the first mile. So we're trying to figure out creatively how to do that. The other problem we have in the U.S. is waste companies, which is, again, I think we got to get rid of the word waste. They should be resource handling companies. Thank you. Yes. But they call themselves waste companies. Waste Management, Inc., the biggest waste management company in the world. I can't, for the life of me, I don't know why they call themselves Waste Management. Well, actually, I do know why, because they make a huge amount of money getting paid by a community, lots of bucks. I pay every month to have my waste collected. They turn around, they sell it to a Chinese broker, and they make money on both sides of the deal, and they've done almost no work. They've done hardly nothing to add value, or jobs for that matter, to the local economy. So they're stealing, and are there any waste companies here? They're stealing money from the local communities. They're stealing resources. So the local communities need to get the power back. They need to say, no, those are our resources, and we want the value back. And and I'm working with some more forward-thinking companies in the U.S. and, well, around the world, but even in the U.S., there's